everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and today we continue the playthrough of Anastyr from Mythic Games. We're going to pick it up exactly where we left it off in the last video. If you haven't checked out the entire Kickstarter Preview Series, I'll put a link to the entire thing in the top right-hand corner. That includes a prototype unboxing, a setup video, as well as the full Quest 1 playthrough. We are now in Quest number 2. We're aiming to accomplish that within this video, and there will be another video after this for Quest number 3. So without further ado, let's find out the narrative for Quest 2 and continue our play. Despite being sickened by the atrocities committed by the Kazuls, you need answers and methodically scour the area in search of survivors. The primary objective is to search the yurts, and when a hero interacts in a space with rotating arrows and also has an objective token, you're going to place the token, the objective token, in one of the empty objective slots below. So we're going to interact with the objective tokens on the map in order to put them on this quest card, and then of course once both spaces contain a objective card, we get to flip it over and continue on. At the end of the last video, we were in the middle of Pyra's turn. A basic action had been completed. We scrolled the board by moving, and now we've used one basic action. We have 2 left to do, and of course we have any free actions we also want to use. So at this point, we'll head back into Pyra's turn and see what we want to accomplish. Things got quite exciting in the last video at the very tail end as trackers and slaughterers appeared, and now we have a wall of enemies to deal with. I'm going to go ahead and perform a technique. This one is a movement of 1, and then we get to push a nearby regular enemy unit. As I'm using this as a technique, I'm able to gain the Fury off this card as well. I can also tuck it underneath my character board and prepare it if I wish, or I can just discard it. Pyra then charges up the battlefield. You can see I'm in a position with loot. We'll talk about that in a second. I might be able to interact with that, but first I want to show you that I've discarded the card I just used. I am gaining the Fury off of it though, which will bump me from 0 up to 1. And something worth mentioning is that nearby in this game basically means anything within the space you're currently in. So there's no enemies nearby, so I can't push anybody. Card I just played for the sequence in the discard pile, gaining the Fury off of it, bumping me up to a 1. These are the 2 cards I have still in hand, keeping them for later use. As a free action, I'm going to discard one of the tokens off my ranged weapon card here, which allows me to do a ranged 1 attack. And this is why it's handy to have loot cards at your disposal, because these don't count towards your basic actions. They're a free action, but you can only do it once during your activation, so I can't go ahead and perform this ranged weapon attack 3 times in a row inside the same activation. I'm also going to choose to go ahead and use a card from hand during this attack to bolster it by +1. We have a 3 as our base, so now we have 4. And as we know from taking out a slaughterer in the past, because that's what I'm targeting, we need 2 successes or more. So this might be overkill, but maybe not, because there is definitely chances we could roll some blanks or some grabs that I don't necessarily want to use at this point, but we'll see. We'll see how this goes. All right, we got the 4 we needed. That's way beyond the 2 we actually needed to kill off the slaughter from a range 1. For my final action, as I'm going to leave the loot there for Brid, instead I'm going to use a focus action, which will burn my 3rd basic action in order to increase my Fury. When you use a focus action, you can choose it to increase your Fury by 1, or you can actually reactivate your reroll token, which I haven't had to use yet, but probably will in the future. So Pyra is now on her way in order to unlock her Fury ability. So for level 2, we don't have a specialist in play. The level 2 specialist is a Skinner. That miniature is up in the top right-hand corner of the game board, not in the game yet. Will likely show up in the future, but we do have regular level 2s, which are the Slaughterers. I took out one of them just moments ago. We got 1 more left. Now you'll notice if you count things, again, diagonal movement for the enemies does not or isn't limited to just 1 diagonal movement within its movement action like the heroes. So they can go diagonal as much as they want. So this Slaughter here can go 1 and 2 heading towards Brid, or head south, essentially 2 spaces to be 1 away from Pyra. So which one does it go for? Well, we first look to see if anyone has a leader token. At this point, no one does. So the next thing we do is look at the initiative track. Whoever activates next is the target. That is going to be Brid. So this Slaughter is heading towards Brid. Now, I like this way of dealing with movement because 1, it's really simple to determine where the enemies are going, and 2, it will throw wrenches into your plans, and you'll see this slaughter is mainly heading towards the back end of the map, which you wouldn't necessarily expect. You might think it would go after the hero that's kind of furthest ahead in terms of how far to the east they've been running, but in this case, the slaughter is more than happy to head back to Brid and deal some damage in the future. The next activation is for level 1s. We do have a specialist in play, the hunter that came out of the hut up there, so we're going to activate that individual now. The hunter is on the move, thankfully not within range to do any kind of damage this time around, but the trackers, on the other hand, go next, and there's a bunch of them next to Pyra, and that's exactly where all those trackers are headed. So Pyra finds herself completely surrounded down there in the corner, so 4 damage coming towards her, +1 for the Pack 1 ability, so 5 now. We need to roll defensively, and thank goodness I've charged up a combo that gives us an increase to dice, but it's probably not going to be enough. As we know, Pyra has 2 defense out of the gates, and because these 2 cards are charged for blinding arrows while this combo is charged, Pyra gains +1, so we have 3 defensive dice. The real question here becomes, how much damage are we going to take here? Unless I roll an incredible roll and getting basically doubles on every single die. That's the only way I'm avoiding damage here. I could also potentially re-roll too. I could also, if I had the right cards, technically try to add another die into this pile, or if I happen to have Brid adjacent to me, which Brid isn't, Brid could have actually discarded a card to bump up my dice as well. That's another thing that's really handy about keeping your heroes close together. I let Pyra go a little bit too far ahead, and now it's being completely swarmed and is probably going to pay the price for that. So here we go, we got ourselves 3. So we blocked 3, that's actually not bad. From the 5 damage coming at us, we still take 2 damage, dropping us down to 6 as the first good hit on Pyra this game. Brid is on the clock right now, so we have 3 basic actions. She does have the Slaughterer close by. We probably want to go and help out Pyra. I'd also like to dig around that loot stash and hopefully find something cool to give to Brid to bolster maybe her attacks or anything else that can help us progress. Now this is a great example of a situation where I would love to have my character just barge right in and be in the same location as Pyra to maybe be able to access the loot there, but there is an accessible space rule, which means, and I talked about this in the prior video, you can at max have 6 capacity in a space. So Pyra counts as 1, the 4 trackers count as 1 each, and even the loot itself counts as 1. So that is a total of 6, meaning that Brid cannot get into the same space. It does not stop Brid though from attacking individuals in that space. You just have to be adjacent to them, of course, if you're trying to do a melee attack. And if you have range, well, you still have range. You can attack from distance still. So I can have Brid just move 1 space to the right there and be able to make attacks in, but I won't be able to get in there with the loot until I clear up some space. So Brid moves ahead and is ready to make an attack in the area that is not accessible. So I'm going to be taking 2 dice, as I have that as my default value of dice when I make a melee attack. And we're going to see what we can pull out here. Now, from cards in hand, I have nothing that can bolster things. I have a ton of defense right now, but not much offense. Even in my combos right now set up, I don't have anything on the offensive. So we're playing very defensively, which is probably good because, as you can see, sometimes you can take some pretty big hits in this game. But we'll probably have to change our tactics in a bit if we start getting behind, if we're playing too defensive. So we're gonna go ahead here and roll, and we got ourselves a grab and a single hit. Now I could use my reroll here to reroll the whole roll if I want to get a better roll off of this, which I'm actually kind of half tempted to do, although there's such a limited amount of dice here. I don't know if this is the right time frame to do it, but I'd love to kill more than just 1, and I don't really necessarily want to grab anybody at the moment per se, so I think I might. This is probably a terrible time to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. We're going to use the reroll token. I'll flip it over to its X side, and we'll roll these 2. We're going to hope, if I get really lucky here, we'll be able to get a 2 and a 3, or I should say a 2 and a 1 to make 3, which would be perfect. Okay, 2. A little bit better, but not amazing. So 2 of the trackers are dead. I'm going to use a basic action in order to focus. We're going to bump up our Fury to 4. I'm really working my way up there because I think it might be handy in the future to trigger that. And I think I'm just going to burn my 3rd action here and hold tight. We're on the defensive in terms of what we've prepared for our combos, so I think we're ready for attacks that are likely to come after us here. We are going to be going into an event next, as you'll see up there in the activation row. That's what's coming up next, so we're grabbing an event card. This is actually pretty awesome because the card says heroes cannot use their reroll, and I happen to just use my reroll, at least on one of the characters, so I won't be able to use my reroll on Pyra. It doesn't stop me from being able to bring it back and activate it, so it's ready, but it certainly stops me from using it, and it does have a timer symbol on the top, right? So that essentially means that that sits like that in play as a passive thing throughout the entire round. I can't use rerolls. And then we can look at the bottom here for any kind of movement. We are going to have some movement. The only creature on the game board currently is going to be heading south. The Sealify Enchanter has moved south 1 space based on its movement on its reference card and based on the event card telling you which direction it goes. It ends up in the space with the Slaughterer, and it's worth mentioning on the card itself for this Enchanter, it mentions that it is going to affect everything in an Aura 1, and it's going to be a -1 for combatants on an art roll. You might be wondering, well, where does that come into play? We haven't seen that yet. There are rolls within the game based on the art stat, and sometimes it can even be combat based as well. Some of the characters use the art roll or stat to actually do a combat. So that's where this Enchanter creature can kind of start messing with things. With the event card Resolve, we move to the level 3 activation at the end of the initiative track, but we don't have any level 3 characters in play yet. But don't worry, that's going to change, because remember how we set up the spawn deck at the end of the last video based on going into quest number 2? We know full well level 3 individuals are popping out right away. Based on the spawn card, we know full well level 3s are coming in. They are called Flayers, at least the regular units of level 3s in this scenario. So we're going to have 1 showing up in the top right-hand corner. After that, we're going to have 2 Slaughterers showing up. And then down from that, 2 Trackers, and then another Flayer at the very end. And just like that, a wall of terror has shown up behind the huts. We also have to roll for a new Sealify, so we'll go ahead and do that right now. Let's see what we get. We got ourselves a complete blank. That is going to be an uncommon. Now this is very interesting indeed. This one is a warrior. I'm going to place it here, as we might want to take advantage of this down the road. It actually gives all combatants in an Aura 1 a +1 when they make attacks based on the attack stat or the combat stat, the red one. So that's not bad. And if we can try to have this thing become a companion of ours, then we can have that bonus just apply to us rather than both us and the enemy. As we go into a new round, the hero preparation phase begins. How many cards do we want to drop? And first, how many cards do we want to discard? So I could, if I find myself overwhelmed by a whole bunch of defensive cards here for Brid, and I really want to try to get some more attack cards in my hand. First off, when you're playing solo, as you can see over here, I only have 1 card. So technically I have 4 cards in hand. I could just choose to draw 2 cards up for Brid and be good and done. But that obviously will limit what Pyro will have available going into her turn. So you have to kind of weigh those things. You can also, during the preparation phase, discard cards prior to drawing to ensure you can hopefully get cards into your hand that you're looking to try and do strategically. For me, fighting would not be a bad idea, so maybe some red triangles would be great. So I did end up deciding to keep all the cards that I have. These are 2 great defensive cards that I can use actually prior to a defensive roll to boost my defense, which would be huge. And then this one here, I actually was thinking of discarding, but then I realized that this could actually help out a nearby hero. If I'm in the same space as Pyra, I can actually boost the health of Pyra back up to full, so probably want to hold on to that. So I decided to pull up 2 cards rather than go after Pyra and give her more cards for her turn. I'm going to give her a lot less. She's only going to have the 1 in hand from last time, but I got a red triangle, so at least I have an additional attack with Brid, and I can really have Brid get in there and make some serious hits. In terms of the initiative track up top, I don't have a leader token, so I can't influence anything around how that is laid out. It also didn't have a chaos marker come up during the previous round, so again, no shuffling or reshuffling of that. It stays as it was. Thank goodness I had the leader token when I did on Pyra to get to the front of the line so I can activate before everything else. So Pyra starts things off. Now, Pyra has a lot on her turn she wants to do, but there's something worth mentioning that I didn't mention when I made the first attack earlier in the video against the Slaughter. The good thing is there's no gameplay impact whatsoever, but on the reference card for the Slaughter, it states, if the space containing a Slaughter is targeted by an attack, ignore any double pip results. Now, the good news is when I re-rolled the dice, I got a 2 pip result, which would have been ignored, but I also got 2 single pip results, and that's all I needed in order to match the defense value of the Slaughter. So that Slaughter I killed earlier was valid. It was a valid kill, but we're going to have to keep an eye on that for this roll right now because any double pip results do not count, making him that much tougher to take down. Something to be aware of. So let's go ahead and roll our 3 dice. You're probably wondering, well, you haven't even mentioned how you're doing that attack. You can probably see in the picture here, ranged weapon. We're going to be discarding 1 of the tokens off this for a free ranged weapon attack. It's loot, and we're going to see whether we can pull this off. So here we go. Okay, so that was really bad. We don't get the double pip result. We got 2 grabs there, and technically Pirate does have a reroll token, but I'm not allowed to use it this time around. So this is going to result in us not being successful. Now this roll is incredibly bad for me because I attacked from range, and I'm attacking a slaughter. The slaughter blocks the 2 pips. The 2 grapples are useless because I attacked from range. If I had him attacked inside the same space as the slaughter, I could have used the grapple icon I got on the die to grapple the enemy, which has effects. And inside of the game, when you grapple somebody, you might be able to also later throw them. And if you throw them, you can potentially not only move, you also get to stun enemies around you. So that can be helpful as well. So you'll probably see this happen when I get into a situation where I can make use of it, but in this situation, being that I attacked from range, this roll's a wash and I can do absolutely nothing about it as the rerolls are all blocked for this round. So we'll go ahead with a maneuver basic action. I'll start off with an attack first. We'll try to take out the trackers that are in the same space. I have 3 dice going into this, so let's see how successful we are here. Hopefully, we are more successful than the last one. Okay, this is actually pretty interesting. So we kill one, but we can also choose to grapple the other. In this case, I absolutely want to use the grapple result on the die in order to grapple the tracker. Now, to signify that you've grappled the enemy, simply place the enemy's base up on top of your hero's base. The second you do this, your actions end in terms of what you're able to do. So that means I had triggered the maneuver action as my very first action for Pyra. I did an attack, and I was about to actually do a move as well. But because I chose to grapple, and it's a choice based on the die results that I got, then that maneuver action is done. So the only thing I can do now is to end my turn, essentially, or to throw the enemy I've grappled. And the throwing of the enemy is an actual basic action in and of itself. So that would be my second action, which is exactly what I plan on doing. Now, when you do this throw, you have a couple things you can do. You can choose to move a space and then throw the enemy into an adjacent space. You really can get some distance on it, or you can even throw the enemy into the space that you're currently in. So for this case, I'm going to throw the enemy over towards the slaughter. I don't really want to move closer to that side of the board as I'm kind of heading east. So I'm going to stay put, fire the enemy over at the slaughter, and when I do, the enemy that I throw instantly dies and the slaughter is going to become stunned. So you can use the grappling technique very strategically in order to help you out, especially when you're cornered and you've got a lot of enemies present. There's also other ways you can use throw, and I'll direct you to the rulebook to find those. You'll see some of them as we go through gameplay, but maybe not every single one of them. So Pyra hooks the arm of the tracker and hurls the tracker over top of herself, landing on top of the slaughter and stunning it. The tracker is taken out, and now we can go ahead with the final basic action that Pyra would like to do, or any free actions. For my last basic action, I'm going to use this technique card that says movement, and we gain the trait or ability speed, which allows us to go diagonal more than once within a given move action, which is the normal constraint. This time we can literally just go diagonal as many times as we want. I have 2 movement. I'm going to use both of those diagonal movements to get right in front of the hunter. Now, speaking about the hunter, I did forget about something during the spawn phase that just triggered in my mind, and that is around, remember that fun ability in quest number 1 where if the hunter was on the game board, another tracker was going to spawn on the east edge side of the board in any of the spaces that I choose? Well, I forgot to place that individual. Good thing there was no gameplay impact, but another individual will be joining the herd on the east end of this board. So I've gone ahead and added it to the space that already had all the enemies, because it would have happened at the end of the spawn phase, so I would have seen exactly what was coming anyway, and I'd rather have it kind of grouped with the same types in the same space. That could be bad for me because it's actually helping their pack ability, but it's also nice to be able to do a big attack and wipe all of them out in one group. So what we're going to do next, I guess Pyra at this point has finished things off. You'll see in terms of the ranged weapon in the bottom right hand corner only has 1 more usage of that. I can't use it in this turn because I've already used it once and failed miserably at it. But at this point, we're now done with Pyra, and we're going to activate level 2 individuals, which are going to be the slaughterers. The slaughterers end up moving 2 towards the nearest hero, which is going to be Pyra for sure, and in this case end up backing up the hunter. And that's exactly who is activating next. As we can see on the initiative track, it is the level 1 specialist first, and then all the level 1 trackers. So the hunter is going to initiate now. Now this is a really cool combo on Pyra's card. It's always given us a +1 on defensive rolls, but it also gives us, when we actually finally discard the cards and spend it fully, we're going to gain before a defensive roll, which would literally happen right now, a movement, so it would allow us to move our allotment, which is 2, and then I get to ignore any dangerous and difficult terrain effects while I do it. I'm basically throwing up a whole bunch of arrows, blinding the enemies momentarily to move to a different position. I'm going to do that right now. We're going to discard both of these cards. If there's any fury on them, them, which there is, there's 1, we get to jump up on the fury track by 1 as well. So we'll be going up from 2 to 3. Now, there were a few things going through my head when I was thinking about the 2 movement. I was initially thinking, hey, let's beeline it right to one of the huts. I can't go to the southern hut because it's on a diagonal. I can't move diagonal twice in a movement. I thought I could go to the other hut up north, but you'll see that the space right to the west of it actually has no border, which means we can't traverse even inside of that terrain. We have to go basically through the enemies, and that's not something I really want to do right now and put myself into harm's way with a whole bunch more behind it. So what I think I'm going to do is use my movement to move diagonally heading southeast, and then we're going to head south to get into the space with the runestone. Now, what is awesome about that move is I blinded all the enemies with arrows, and now I'm outside of the range that any of them can make attacks against me, specifically the hunter. So it worked out in my advantage to avoid any kind of attack coming towards me. You might have probably wondered, well, why did you bother going in that direction before? Well, I actually wouldn't have been able to reach this runestone space if I didn't do this. So at this point, because the hunter was just about to attack and now can't, hunter's activation is done. We now move to the trackers, which are going to head towards me. The move in of all the trackers fills up the entire space now with a total of 6, again, including the runestone. It's also worth mentioning the only con of this strategy is that that particular warrior creature that's in there is going to give a +1 to combatants in that space, which means the trackers have 1, 2, and 3 across the 3 figures, +1 for pack 1, +1 for the warrior entity in there. So it's 5 coming at me. I've only got 2 dice with this, no cards in hand, no hero nearby to help me, so this is a con for sure. And one of the reasons I was trying to get to this companion is to try to make it a companion in the future, but I can't do it this quickly, of course, because it's not even my activation. Here we go. 2 dice, hoping to block as much as possible. We got 3, that's not bad, so we're going to take 2 hits. At this point, poor Pyra is halfway down the health track. We're going to have to keep an eye on that and probably do some healing in the future. Now, we just finished activating the level 1 individuals, but I had forgotten to show you on camera that I had stood up the stunned slaughter away at the back of the board there back when the level 2 ones activated. Again, they don't do anything when they're stunned beyond just standing up, so don't have to worry about any attacks or anything else. So at this point, Brid is up to activate next. Lots of ground to cover for Brid in order to be useful and helpful to Pyra, who is now very much in the thick of it. Now, taking a look at where Brid is positioned, we have a slaughter just to the west of her, and she definitely wants to deal with that. She also has a ton of cards in hand right now, thanks to the way I drew things up and kept cards in her hand. She does have a red triangle or a kind of a combat attack card she could use potentially, but what I'm looking at more so, based on the fact that Brid's not that great at attacking from any kind of range, needs to usually be in the same space, but she does have this shield throw ability here that I can trigger if I can get a blue square and a red triangle side by side. It says Brid would target her space and an adjacent space, make an attack with a +1 in the targeted spaces, plus Brid would also gain this yellow die, which is even extra special on top of it to add fury and everything else into the equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, for the first time I think in this play, I'm going to discard a card that I have prepared in my row. This does not count as a basic action whatsoever. You can do this anytime you want. So I'm going to toss this green one because I had prepared for the ironclad defense, but we really don't need it at this point in time. Maybe I can build towards it later on anyway with all the cards I've got in my hand. So we're going to discard this one here and we're going to slot in this one instead, preparing it to be used in a different way. And you'll see this one does have fury on it. So as soon as I prepare it, I get to go up on the fury track. So we discarded the card in the center here for free, and then I prepared a card that does take a basic action away from me, so I have 2 left. As soon as I prepared the card, gained a fury, so I'm up to 5. I'm almost up to the very top of that chart now. What's even cooler is right now, as a free action, I can go ahead and make use of a combo, and I'm going to use the shield throw that I just talked about. So I'll be discarding these 2 cards, and when you use them for a combo, you also get the fury off them as well. So this is another way to really bump up the fury. It's not only preparing cards into your row in other different ways, but also just initiating one of those combos. So I'm going to be jumping from 5 up to 7. So I'm obviously going after the Slaughterer as my main target here. I'm going to be going in with 2 dice, 2 white dice. Again, by initiating this one here, I get +1 on the attack, so an extra die. plus I go ahead and gain a yellow die on top of it, and as you can see, this yellow die can increase my fury. So this should tick me up to the highest level. Let's go ahead and roll and see how we do. I don't want to see any single die with 2 pips on it though, because the Slaughterer does not care about those and defends against them. That will work. That is 3. We only needed 2, and we got the fury we needed on top of it, which bumps me up to the highest position. So we just enabled our fury ability. The Slaughterer has been taken care of, and as the Fury track reached the top for Brid, we flip over Brid's special Fury ability, which we do not have to trigger right away. We can wait and use it when we wish, and then once we do, the Fury track will go back down to 0, and we can work our way back up to using the ability again in the future. Brid's ability here says Longhorn Charge. It says Brid targets an accessible space and moves into it in a straight line, ignoring imposing, difficult, and dangerous terrain effects and inaccessible spaces. An attack with +1 against the starting space, the targeted space, and all spaces along her path. And then all specialists and regular enemies targeted by this attack are then stunned, and Brid becomes the leader. So there is a lot of good things inside of that ability. Now this is certainly a tough call to make, but to be completely honest, I want to make sure Brid can get into the action, and I want to make sure Brid's at least within striking distance of maybe 2 spaces away from some enemies. If I was, with my last basic action, to just walk into space with loot, I'd only be able to literally walk in there and just stand there, and then at the beginning of the next activation, I could then use an interact basic action in order to try and dig up some loot, which would be great, but I would burn a lot of time and not a lot of progress, and I just don't know if it's necessarily worth it with Pyre up there fending off basically everybody by herself. So I think what I'll do is do a maneuver action with Brid, but instead of doing any kind of attacking with it, I'm just going to simply use it for his 2 move, and we're going to head east as fast as possible. So Brid is charging on and ignoring the loot, unfortunately, as much as I wanted it, and almost in hindsight now kind of wish that I had Pyre actually pick it up when she was in the space, but hey, it is what it is, and strategy does change as you run into different enemies and as they begin to swarm your other heroes. Inside the activation row, we land on the Jade Sea, which triggers the event. So we take a look. This also means that the prior event that was in play for the entire round around not being able to reroll is gone. This one replaces it. Cold Fury. It says all heroes in or adjacent to one of the spaces with a mass grave gain a fury. They're getting even more enraged by seeing those mass graves. Unfortunately, we are far enough away from all of them. We don't gain this benefit, but as you will see, there is going to be some movement on the board for some of the other summons and creatures. So the Warrior and the Enchanter on the board are going to move to the east 1 position. One of them is going to run into some impassable terrain, so we'll have to go around the rocks. And just like that, the event phase has been resolved. We're now moving to level 3 activation. The 2 level 3 individuals, the Flayers on the east side of the board, are activating right now. We're starting with the one furthest north first. It has 2 movement, and it is most certainly attempting to get to the closest hero. The Flayer comes flying in. It doesn't make it into the space where Pyre is, thank goodness, but it's right there. The other one, though, that needs to activate, that was a little further south, that one is going to make it in. But if you count up the units as well as the rune that's in there, we have 5 in the space with Pyre right now. And the ones that are on mounted back, they count for 2. So they can't actually come into the space. So what do? They'll stay adjacent to the space and still make an attack anyway. So the key thing to remember is that in order for one of these units to really make an attack, it needs to have been able to access the space if it hadn't have already been filled up by the unit count. So the only one that can really truly make an attack is this one, because it did have the 2 movement to get into the space. It just couldn't enter into the space. So it is allowed to attack by being adjacent, whereas this one, after its 2 move, wouldn't have had the 3rd move it needed to get into the space, so it cannot attack adjacently at this point in time. Now later on, that'll be another problem, but for now we have 1 attack, 1 Flayer coming at us. Now just so you can see the reference card for this level 3 enemy, it states in the middle the Flayer's attack is going to target all nearby heroes. As we know, nearby inside of this game means everybody in the same space. So it's not going to attack anybody adjacent to, but basically if our heroes are in the same space together, that is not a good recipe for avoiding damage from the Flayer. Now in this case, the Flayer is coming at us with 4 That is a substantial hit, and we currently have 2 for defense with Pyra. I do not have 2 cards charged that gave me that extra +1 on defense for the blinding arrows anymore. Those cards are gone, so I only have 2 dice to roll in defense right now, and nobody is around to help, and I have 0 cards for Pyra as well. I do have a reroll though, so that could be useful if I really mess up here. Remember that the canceling of the reroll has now expired, essentially, right? So here we go. Hopefully I get a good result. Okay, so 1 and 1. So I'm basically blocking half the damage. Now the question is, do I bother using that reroll token, hoping I can get maybe like a double pip on one of the results? Let's try it. I mean, why not? Let's go ahead. So we're gonna flip this reroll over to the other side. I'm gonna try my best to make this happen. This, again, might not be the best time to use this when you only have 2 dice, but hey, sometimes you can get a little desperate just for the fun of it. Okay, so we got literally no difference whatsoever with that roll at all. So that was a complete wash. The other one, at least, when I did a reroll back in prior with Brid, it kind of bumped me up a bit. This one didn't work out so well. Now, Pyra's situation is getting a little concerning because, well, as you can see, 2 more damage is going to drop Pyra from 4 down to 2. We're getting a little bit dangerously close to dying here. We really need to heal the next time Pyra activates. The activation token has made it to the end of the row. We're going to go ahead and draw a spawn card because, well, more reinforcements are coming in. Oh wow, this one is gonna be fun, said nobody ever. In the top right hand corner, a level 3, we have another one of these flares coming in. That's not good. We have another slaughterer coming in underneath that, another flare, and then 3 of the trackers. Yikes, we're gonna have a large concentration of units on the east side of the board here to deal with. This is gonna get a little bit troublesome. Now you'll see in the middle it says to swap the level 1 specialist with the level 1 regular enemy. Activation card with that of the westmost hero. So this is going to actually change up the initiative row as well. Just before we deal with that though, let's go ahead and populate the board with a whole bunch more enemies. I'm all of a sudden getting this sense of impending doom the more I see these enemies just filling up the game board. I'm also going to reread the card because I might have read it in a way that got a little bit confusing, but this is still pretty bad in terms of what it's going to do to the initiative row for me. It says right here to swap the specialist 1 and the regular enemy level 1 card, so that's basically the 3rd card in from the initiative row, with that of the westmost hero. So unfortunately, Pyra is going to be going quite a bit after. We're going to literally have the level 1s go first, then the level 2s, then Pyra, and then Brid. This is a recipe for disaster. Yeah, this is really bad all the way around because I tried my hardest getting that leader token earlier on to get Pyra to the front of the row. That spawn card literally erased that move. We now head into the next hero preparation phase. I have 4 cards for Brid, 0 for Pyra, and honestly, I don't know if I really need all 3 of the defensive cards that I have for Brid, so I think I'm going to discard one of them. I'll keep the heal because the heal could really help out Pyra if she can survive in the first place against all the activations coming her way. So let's go ahead. I'll discard one of these 3 blue cards, and that'll allow me to draw 3 cards for Pyra, hopefully giving her options to try to at least defensively deal with whatever pain and suffering is coming her way very soon. Here's a look at the cards that I've drawn up. Hopefully we can make use of them to keep Pyra alive, but first we go to the initiative row where we activate all the level 1 enemies. Things are not looking good for Pyra. The first thing to activate is going to be the Hunter, which is a specialist. It's going to head south 1 position. As we know, the Hunter, based on its abilities, range 1 harassment, likes to be range 1 away from the enemies when it makes its attack and harasses them. So it's going to be going ahead and making a 4 damage attack against Pyra, and this is where things are going to get a little bit tough. Taking a look at the cards that Pyra has to use to hopefully help her out, well, the first 2 are not going to help, but this one would happen before defensive roll, which is about to happen right now. The problem is it would push a specialist or 2 regular units near Pyra, but I mean, yeah, I could do this. It would help me to push away a couple of the trackers, but they would just run right back into my space anyway. And on top of it, I can't push the Hunter away as it's already 1 space away and isn't nearby in the first place. And that's the one that's actually doing the attack. So we are in trouble. We're going to go ahead and roll some dice now on defense. Just 2 white dice. And literally, unless I get a double pip result here, I'm toast. So here we go. And I really need to get a double pip and a single pip just to stay alive. So here we go. Come on, Pyra, you can pull it off. Yes! Somehow, some way, that panned out and I am still alive. Doesn't make any sense at all. Now the fun's not over as we move to the regular level 1 enemies, and we have a bunch of them. Now again, in the space where Pyra is, there's already 5 units in there, so only one more tracker can make it in. But remember, as long as the trackers could make it there with movement, they will sit on the outside adjacent to the space and still contribute to the pain and suffering in that space. So those 3 trackers that are further off in the bottom right hand corner are going to come as close as possible, and then they're all going to dogpile me. Yeah, this is really, really bad. Now, if we're counting up how many these individual trackers we have that are part of the attack, we've got 4 in our space, 2 adjacent to us. They're all adding in. That's 6, plus the pack 1 ability of an extra die, so that's 7. The only thing I can do, which I don't even know if it helps me because I still think I'm in trouble, and I might as well do it though, is to use this card before the defensive roll to push either one of the specialists or 2 of the regular minions, which would be these trackers. And when you push something, so this card's going to go in the discard pile, because I'm definitely going to do this, I'm going to take 2 of the trackers and essentially I'm going to shove them on purpose up against a space they can't access, which is going to be this giant rock right here, and I'm going to kill them because, as it states in the rules, if you're pushing them into a targeted space you choose nearby and they can't move into that space, they take a hit point of damage. So essentially I'm crushing them up against the rock. So that was the last thing that Pyra could have done right before she definitely dies here, because even if I get 2 double pip results here, I'm still going to take 1 point of damage, and 1 point of damage is all I need to die. So rolling these dice is at this point kind of a lost cause. Doesn't matter what I get on these, yeah, it's bad news. When a hero is KO'd, you're going to place the KO'd hero on a space reserved for the KO'd heroes. That's going to be that red space right next to the reserve hero that we have. Now, if the hero supply was empty right now, the game would end immediately and the players would lose. But because we still have a reserved hero, we can keep going. The reserved hero Undral has shown up, and she goes in the exact same space that Pyra died inside of. Again, unless of course there's some kind of unit restriction around that space or something changed and she can't go there, then there are rules around where she should go instead. We definitely can stay in the spot that Pyra died in and hopefully avenge her death by being a little bit more successful with more HP in hand. Now the things we have to change out, of course, the character dashboards, the miniatures, getting rid of all of Pyra's stuff, and we're resetting, of course, the Fury track. Everything goes back to basically default settings for our reserve character Undral. So everything on screen here for Pyra is going to change over to Undral. And just like that, our reserve player is in play. We also draw 3 cards for this character. Here are the 3 cards which I've just drawn up from the deck, and there's one last thing to tweak, and that's the initiative row. Up where Pyra was in the initiative row is just replaced with the initiative card for Undral. You'll see the Undral activation card up there, as well as us moving along to the level 2 activation, which in this case has no specialist, but definitely has slaughterers all over the place. They're going to make their way into the same space as our new hero or adjacent to it to make a combined attack. It's become pretty insane in that bottom corner there, but the slaughterers are going to attack. There's 1 in the space. It's going to roll 3 dice, and then it's going to add 1 and another 1 for the other slaughterers on the outside that couldn't come into this space because it wasn't accessible based on it hitting the unit count. So we're going to have a total of 5 dice coming at her brand new hero already. One of the major positives out of the gate is that I do have, by default, more defense than the prior hero, so I have 3, but I don't have any cards I can currently use right now, either before or after the defensive roll. Unfortunately, I do have the reroll token, though, so that could be useful. Let's go ahead and roll, and I guess we just pray that I get a whole bunch of double pips here. Let's see how it goes. That is not good. One of them rolled off screen, so we ended up with a blank and 2 singles. Now, if we're taking a look at how much damage we're going to take, that's going to be 3. That's a substantial amount. It's almost half my health. I think I might actually roll that again. So let's go ahead and use the reroll token right out of the gates here and see if we get a better result. Come on, give me a better defensive result. That's a little bit better, but really not as much as I hoped. So even with a fresh hero, we're already taking wounds on this individual. We definitely need to come up with a big strategy this round to kind of carve out the enemies and slow down the pace at which we're taking hits. The next individual to activate is Undrel, and there is something that I just noticed that I missed and definitely should have added into the fray as an effect on die rolling. Remember when this entity here, the warrior, came into play and had an aura 1? Well, it would have impacted any combat rolls with a +1, enemies or heroes. Now, I didn't make use of them at all. Now, I don't think that would have changed the gameplay and what happened at all. It probably would have just layered on even more pain my way. But in this case, going forward in this area, I'm definitely going to remember that because it does have an impact on combat rolls. Now, if I go ahead and discard a green card to use my art for the roll, then I'm not going to be able to gain the +1 from the warrior here. So that's something I have to weigh, is whether I want to do that or not. But as you can tell, just from the art stat alone, it's higher. So even with a +1 on the 2, it's still not as good. So going with that art roll could really be beneficial. Now the question is, who do I attack with all these guys surrounding me? I also noticed another slip that I made, and that is that the hunter's still in play. So at the end of the spawn phase that we went through a bit ago, I would have had another tracker coming out, and I would have been able to place it in any of the east location side of the board, in any of those 4 positions. I would have definitely chosen the top right one to keep it as far away from Pyra as possible. It would have then activated during this round, which would have had it, as you saw, all the trackers basically piled down on Pyra. So the tracker in the top right-hand corner would have got as far as this space right here. It would have just added an additional die into the fray, which would have been fun. Basically mass overkilling Pyra, not really changing the gameplay at all, but I made sure that I added that miniature into the pile. We've got quite a formidable force here to deal with. Now, strategy-wise, you might look at this and go, wow, we are really between a rock and a hard place here, literally, because we're stuck in a corner and it appears like we're surrounded on all sides. Inside of this game, you can, as a hero, choose to maneuver and move in general by using techniques or just that maneuver action to basically move out of the area you're in. Even though you're engaged with enemies in that space, you're not stuck there. Now, the only way you would be stuck there is if the actual enemy had a trait called imposing. If it does have that, then you are stuck there until that enemy's killed off. In this case, none of these enemies on the board have that, so I do have the ability to move. I could literally just move through them and run towards the objective up north and just hope to survive long enough. But knowing that we can do a maneuver as a basic action, which allows us to do an attack and then move, we might as well do that first, try to clear up some of this mess a little bit at least. So let's go ahead, discard this card from hand as part of our special ability that allows us to, instead of using the 2 dice for a regular red attack, we're going to use the art green stat, which is 4 dice for Undrel being a shaman. So this is going to be quite interesting. We got 4 dice and we're going to roll and make an attack in the space that we're in. See if we can clear out as much as humanly possible here. And we got ourselves a pretty decent roll, 4 damage and a grabber grapple. At the end of the day, we didn't even need the grapples and we can't use them because, well, we ended up killing off everything in the space, which is perfect. Now we can start running for that objective. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have Undrel head for the objective north, and maybe I'll have Brid come up from behind, stay along the bottom portion of the board and go straight into the enemies and see how that goes. So Undrel is booking it across, again, going straight through an area with enemies. They don't have the imposing trait, so she's not stuck there, thank goodness. And at this point, we do still have the ability to do 2 basic actions. Again, the warrior summon didn't help me at all there because I used an art roll and not a red type of combat. But now that I've gone ahead and done a maneuver and I've already burnt the green card that I have to make that an art roll, I would be doing any kind of red attack going forward. But I'm too far away now from that warrior summon to be able to make use of its aura. So unfortunately, that's not going to help me. But I do have a card here, which I think I'm going to play. This one here is called, and I'll use it for its sequence. It's a ranged 1 attack here with a red. And so basically I go ahead and resolve this. I'm also going to gain the Fury off the card, jumping me from 0 to 1. Now the fun part about this is that my actual red or typical combat attack is just 2 dice. It's not that strong, but I'm going to try to see from range 1 away if I can take out the Slaughterer, because if I can, there's no more Slaughterers in play, and that would be quite nice to kind of, drain the swamps of them. And they do some decent hits at 3 as a base, which I do not like. So let's go ahead and try to take them out. We got them. For my final basic action here, you can see my combos for the first time across this new hero that I can eventually build towards. I need a green one to get things started though. Putting a blue in right now would not be a good use for third action. I could flip over my reroll token if I wanted to focus, but instead of doing that, I could also heal and try to bring my health back up to 7, seeing as I just took a good hit and I've probably taken more in the future. This one says I roll 2 dice to heal. Let's go ahead and do it. Hope that we get the pips we need to heal up, and we did not. Wow, what a colossal fail that was. Now, of any of the heroes that I've controlled thus far, Brit is by far the most prepared. Full health, Fury's unlocked and ready to go. All kinds of cards slotted into combo slots. We have a full hand of cards to use as well, and we're looking pretty good all the way around. So we really just need to get in there and start thinning the herd of enemies. I've got quite the plan for Brid. I think this is going to end up being really epic if I can pull off what I think I'm going to be able to string together. So the first thing I'm going to do is a maneuver. That's going to allow me to move. I'll move diagonally around this giant rock. We'll head right into the space with the Hunter and the Mount and the Slaughterer. Brid charges into the pile. We're going in with 2 dice on the red stat, but we are within 1 space of the warrior summon there off to our right, which gives us a +1 when we make a regular combat attack. So this is awesome because now we're going in with 3 dice, which gives us a better chance of getting past, well, we need 3 hits against the Hunter if I want to take out the one that is probably the most annoying of all of these. But I have plans for the rest. Don't worry, don't worry. So we're going to go ahead and roll these off and see if I can get my 3 hits that I need. Oh, we even got a little better than that. So I don't know if the extra hit will do enough for the Slaughter. Well, actually, I know it won't. Will it do enough for the Flare? No. The Flare has a defense of 3. The Slaughter has a defense of 2. So really, if I use 3 for the Hunter, the other 1 is a wash and it's gone. Honestly, I'm a-okay with it. We're going to kill that Hunter off. We now gain a new loot card, the first one for Brid. The card is a battered shield that we can use before a defensive roll by the hero. We get a +1 to the defensive roll. The hero ignores attraction and any level 1 traits. Wow, that could be super handy. We also get 2 usages on this, so we'll put 2 tokens on top. You also might be wondering, how many loot cards can a hero have? 2 at maximum. Now, as a free action, and remember we've only spent 1 basic action so far, this is free to use his Fury ability, and this is a perfect time to use it based on kind of what's in line here. We can wipe out or hopefully kill off a bunch of different enemies. So it states here that Brid targets an accessible space and moves into it in a straight line, ignoring imposing, difficult, and dangerous terrain effects and inaccessible spaces. We do an attack with a +1 against the starting space, the target space, and all spaces along her path. All the specialists and regular enemies targeted by this attack are then going to be stunned by Brid, and Brid becomes the leader. So in essence, I am going to be heading east. I'm literally going to be attacking the Slaughterer and then the Flare first. Then I'm going to be hitting the Tracker. Then I'm going to be hitting the Flare and ending up in that spot. Now, for whatever I don't kill while I make these attacks, they're getting stunned. So this is a devastating hit straight down the middle. What's even more epic about this attack is the fact that the warrior summon is in the space and it will literally be adjacent to me for all 3 positions, meaning for every single roll I'm getting an additional die. So I'm up to 4 dice for each of the spaces I'm moving in a straight line. This is going to be crazy. So hopefully I can pull off some pretty big hits here and I don't have the dice screw me over, and I don't have any rerolls present either. So here goes. Oh, that's a massive hit. 4, 5, 6. That is going to be enough to actually take out the Slaughterer and the Flare in my space. And Brid is going to keep on charging. So here we go with 4 more dice again with another attack. This is going to be mass overkill on the 1 Tracker that's there, beyond probably what we need. That thing is long gone. And then finally, face to face with a Flare in the back. We're going to go ahead and roll this off. Let's see how we do. Oh, we actually did not do very well that time, so that backfired just a little bit, but we do have the ability to grapple. Now this is really cool. So we've gone ahead and grappled this level 3 enemy. And at this point, remember, I've only used 1 basic action so far. That Fury ability just got fully used. Now, remember, it says in here that when you are done with all this, that this enemy is stunned, but I'm choosing to grapple it, which changes things. If I choose to grapple it, of course, it's not going to be stunned because its base is now on top of mine, because I'm choosing to throw this thing. Now, when you want to throw an enemy, that is going to be a basic action. action. So I have 2 basic actions left. Let's go ahead, move 1 to get myself closer to an objective, and then we're going to go ahead and throw this enemy at another enemy, not only killing the one I'm throwing, but stunning somebody else. Brid moves over, chucks one of these flayers on top of the other flayer. The one is dead, the other is stunned. With that now done, we have 1 more basic action left. Our Fury ability has been fully used, so it gets flipped back over and the track gets reset back to 0. For my 3rd basic action, I would love to use this sequence card here to heal up Undral, who is down by 2 health, but it needs to be nearby, so I need to be in the same space. That wasn't possible. Instead, let's go ahead and just flip over our reroll token this time. That's going to do it for Brid's turn. We now move to an event card. Now, it is worth mentioning that this is the 3rd last event card in the deck, and if you remember, when we eventually get to this pull, if there is no event card to be pulled, we lose the game. So we have 2 more to go after this one, so keep that in mind. This one here is called Meditation. All heroes may prepare a combo with a technique card from their discard pile, and then we're going to have creatures and any summons. We're going to be heading actually back west. So the Warrior and the Enchanter are going to shift west 1 position each. And just like that, the auras that they affect around them have also changed. Preparing a combo for free as an event sounds awesome because I get to do that without ever using a basic action. I'm going to do that with this one here. I have 2 defensive cards in hand. This one sounds way better to me because Brid would become the leader and that would give me the leader token, allowing me to manipulate the activation track in the future, which would maybe help me get Brid ahead of all the activations of the enemies, which have kind of, well, caused some problems as they killed off one of my heroes because of it. So this is a good one to keep in hand for later. This one I'm happy to go ahead, slot into the leftmost slot, which is empty. Whenever you prepare a combo, it goes into the left-hand slot. Any ones that you had in there previously aren't going to shift around. They're just going to stay where they're at, which means I could trigger, if this one's over here for blue and this one's here for blue, I could still trigger Retaliation, which is why I want to do this, because Retaliation, it still is a very powerful defensive reaction. And I shouldn't use the term reaction because reaction's actually something else within the game. It's more so the use of that combo can be really, really helpful on defense. Now over here, not so much of a help. As you can see, Undral really banks on the green cards being first in the sequence, so putting the blue card in wouldn't necessarily net me anything positive at this point, so I'm going to hold off here on that one. Level 3s are activating next. Thank goodness I took one down in terms of stunning it. It's just going to stand itself back up. The other one up north is going to move to the closest hero, and it's going to attack. And just like that, the Northern Flayer has come into the same space as Undral because the heroes were equal distance. And then the next we check for is the leader token. Nobody has it. Next thing is who's next in the initiative or activation order. It would be Undral in the next round around. So it is going to be Undral that's getting this Flayer, and the Flayer is attacking for 4. Undral has a defensive stat of 3. I could get a +1 from Brid. The problem is that would be me discarding the card that would make Brid a potential leader in the future. Don't really want to do that. So I'm actually going to have Undral go ahead, unfortunately, and roll 3 dice against a 4 attack and hope for the best. Hoping for the best. That is never a good sign. Okay, so we got ourselves 3. That's pretty good. So we ended up blocking 3. We only take 1 damage, dropping us from 5 down to 4. We're now dealing with a new spawn card. This one's going to put 1 slaughter up top, 2 of the trackers underneath, 2 more trackers underneath that, and then 2 more trackers underneath that. Thankfully, we killed off the hunter, so during this spawn, we don't have to add an additional one, and I also don't have to forget to add an additional one. Now the good news here is that this looks a little bit less stressful than what we had a couple rounds ago when this seemed to be just a massive horde of individuals to go after. We still have stuff to deal with here, but I'm okay with a bunch of trackers. I really didn't like to see so many slaughterers, flayers, and all these special, or I should say specialist miniatures mixed in there. It really started to worry me that we could be, well, running short on our adventure quite quickly, but we somehow were able to get out of the thick of it, and now we can try to focus our attention on getting those objective tokens and completing quest 2. So going into the next hero preparation phase, we have 2 cards in hand for Brid, 1 for Undral. Again, when playing solo, you have 6 cards total at your hand limit, and all these are combined. I'm just kind of keeping them separate so I know which ones I can use for which turn. But we're going to go ahead, and I think we're just going to draw 1 more up for Brid here. So I'll do that. It's actually the last card in the deck. Now, once you run out of cards to draw, which I'm not going to be drawing another one, but later, when I eventually do, you'll take the discard pile of cards you've already used, shuffle them, and create a new deck. Simple as that. Now, over here on the Undral side of things, things, definitely want to draw 2 more cards up. I'm okay going with a 3-3 split, but be aware, strategy-wise, you can go more with one and less with the other if you wish. All right, overall, pretty happy with this because I'm seeing a lot of green cards coming in for Undraw, and I know that really could help with combos. It could also help with boosting her general attacks that she makes because of her special ability. And yeah, we have some options here, and let's see what we can put together. The activation track starts off with level 1 individuals, and well, we've got a whole bunch of those to move. So this is what it looks like when Brid gets completely surrounded by trackers. There's 5 in Brid's space. There's 3 on the outskirts, all of them part of this attack. So that's going to be 8 right there with the pack one that adds an additional one. That is 9 damage coming through. We really need to up our defenses to try to handle this kind of attack. Good to see that Brid still has a reroll. That's going to come in handy for sure. For now, we're going to go ahead and discard these 2 cards, and I'm going to gain a Fury off of it in order to basically trigger retaliation. So before a defensive roll by Brid, we get a +1 to our roll. It's already at 4, so we're going up to 5 dice. And then after the defensive, we get to be offensive and actually make an attack. So Brid has 5 dice at the ready here for defense. I'm going to go ahead and discard this one here because I can, for Brid, discard a card of any type in this top right hand corner based on her special ability when using it for defense and add to the fray. So this is going to be discarded. That's going to add additional dice. Now I've got 6. I'm also going to have Undraw discard a card in hand in order to add another die on top of that. Undraw is going to discard the middle one here, which is going to give us a +1. So now we have 7 dice for Brid to roll against 9. This is easily one of the largest defensive rolls so far in the game. Here we go. One of the largest attacks, too, on top of it. So let's see how this pans out. Ooh, we did not do so good. We only got, well, we got 5. So we'd be taking 4 damage. Do I want to try and re-roll it? Kinda. Yeah, I do. So let's go ahead and use the re-roll token. We'll flip it over for Brid. We're going to see if we get a better result the next time through. Come on, give me some doubles. That's better. 6, 7, 8. We only take 1 damage. Now, what is awesome about what just happened is not only did I defend extremely well, but the combo that I use as a reaction for Brid now allows me to make an attack into the same space of enemies that I've got here with 2 dice based on my regular attack. So let's go ahead with that. Of course, I could boost it up if I felt like it, but I'm not going to. So here we go, 2 dice into the fray. We got ourselves a grapple and a hit. That worked out pretty good. We killed off 1 enemy. We've now grappled another, and at the start of Brid's next activation, the first thing and the only thing I'll be able to do when you've got somebody grappled is to throw, which I can definitely throw at one of those larger level 3s to potentially stun them, which would be pretty handy seeing as they actually activate after us. Now, the other thing I want to mention is I did have the battered shield on Brid, and you might be wondering, why didn't you use it? Well, it's because I had such a crazy combo there that I really wanted to use. I just focused on that mainly, and that attack was kind of a nice addition from it. The next activation is for the level 2s. That is the Slaughterer, and the Slaughterer is going to trudge forward 2 spaces and can get into either hero's space, but it's going to go after Undraw as Undraw is next in line and there's no leader token in play. Now, Undraw has a base of 3 dice. Now, I could go ahead and discard that wonderful card that makes Brid a leader, which I still haven't used yet, in order to help out, seeing as I'm adjacent, but I think I won't. I don't know if I'm probably going to regret that. I really hope this roll goes well, because I'm currently at 4 health with Undraw, and the amount of damage coming at me right now is 3, and I'm rolling 3 dice. So I'm hoping that is enough to deal with whatever pain is coming my way here. So let's see how much we defend. Oh yeah, that's an easy defend. Nothing coming through. And now we get to retaliate. And Undraw knows that she can start things off with an attack when she uses a maneuver basic action, which is what she's going to do. She's going to go ahead and discard, I think, I'm going to discard this green card right here in order to boost my attack to an art-based attack, which is going to be quite interesting indeed. And actually, I just remembered that I didn't roll an extra die for Brid when we were attacking, retaliating back after the combo because of this +1 art right here. So we probably should do that. Let's go ahead and do that retroactively. We haven't gone too far ahead, so let's definitely do it. All right, 1 extra hit. So we kill off 1 extra individual in that space. Good thing I remember that. As of right now, like I said, discarding this for Undral's turn, that is going to allow me to roll 4 dice on the attack, which definitely helps me to hopefully kill off that flare, because that thing is got some serious defense at 3. Let's see how we do. Oh, that's a great roll. 6. That's incredible. So we're killing off everyone in that space. To finish off the maneuver, I'm going to move into the space with the objective token. And there we go. We've gone ahead and completed our first basic action. The second action I'm going to do is obviously to interact with this objective token as part of the quest. We're going to do some searching. So when a hero is going to do an interaction in a space containing an objective token, place the token in one of the empty objective slots below. Now it's worth mentioning that you have to discard a card if there's not a symbol next to the INT. So basically, if it says you're doing an interaction with an INT and there's no circle, square, or triangle, then you choose a card from your hand to discard in order to do this interaction. If you happen to see a symbol next to the INT, like it shows a green circle, you have to discard that type of card to be able to interact. Now, the good thing is here, it's almost like a wild. You can pick any card in your hand. Thankfully, I still have 1 card left. Undral has in hand. This is the card that's going to go into the discard, leaving her with no cards in hand, but we can take the token now and place it on the quest. Not bad at all. And guess what? We still have a basic action left, and guess what I'm doing? I cannot afford to see Undral fall and have us lose the game, so let's do a heal here. We're going to roll 2 white dice. Yikes, that was not a good roll. We only got a single health. That's going to end off Undral's turn, and now Brid gets to activate. Brid begins the turn, and she definitely wants to throw the enemy. It's the only thing she can do currently. She's going to chuck it into the space where the flare is, knocking it over and stunning it and killing the thrown enemy. Not a bad way to start a round, so that tracker is dead. Next up, we are going to attack everything in the space next to us. So we have 2 dice plus the 1 for the warrior summon here, which is 3. Here we go. Let's see if we can kill them. Oh yeah, that's exactly what we wanted to see. So Brid kills them all off and then maneuvers into, using movement into the space of the objective token. The last basic action is going to be to interact. I can simply just discard any card from hand. Now I do have a card here that can heal, and I have that leader token one. Yikes. You know what? I think I will discard the heal. So we'll go ahead and discard the heal card in order to interact. We're picking up that token, placing it on the quest, and completing it. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up Quest 2, a Ghastly Sight. With the 2 objective markers on there, it says when both spaces contain an objective token, flip this card. As you are about to give up, you hear a plaintive cry from behind a yurt. Hastening toward the sound, you come across a nomad stretched out on the ground. Gutted by a tracker's knife, she lies, agonizing in a pool of blood. The woman's face is livid, and she clings to your arms as death tugs at her. Through the pain, she answers your single question. Nogai was here, but managed to escape. He left with a handful of fighters to warn the bulk of the tribe, which has set up camp further north. With her dying breath, she mouths vengeance, then slumps limp and lifeless. You can do no more for her. We now spawn a specialist level 2 in the eastmost mass grave space, and then replace this quest card with the quest card 3 underneath. You can see it's called Swift Vengeance. The eastmost space with a mass grave is up there in the top right. The Skinner appears as we begin Quest 3. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up quest number 2. We've completed it successfully. We only have 2 active heroes we're currently controlling left, with none in reserve. We are down to just 2 more unseen event cards, so time is ticking down. We also cannot afford to lose any heroes at this point. So, will we actually come out with a victory, or will time and or a untimely death take us down? Well, I guess you're going to have to wait until the next episode to find out. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you want to know more about solo board gaming, definitely check out the Rolling Solo Board Game community on Facebook, also the Rolling Solo Discord, and the Patreon, which is the backbone of the channel. Really hope that this series of gameplay videos is helping you to make an informed decision as whether or not this is going to be something for you. Thank you guys so much. Cannot wait to see your comments down below about what you think so far. And as always, keep on rolling solo.